Tyson, speaking of you, you're in such an interesting position. You're right. You have great skill for any size fighter, but especially for a 6'9", 260+ pound fighter. You're the biggest and the most skilled. You're also as tough as anyone. I mean, at a certain point, everyone's really tough, but you've gotten up from the Deontay Wilder right hand. He landed his Sunday punch on you, and you get up in the 12th round of that fight, and I thought you won the fight. But when you look at your resume, you have several excellent top-notch wins, like Klitschko and Wilder. But you haven't fought everyone in the era. It's not it's a top-heavy resume. And now you have in front of you an era with Anthony Joshua still out there you haven't fought. Usyk is out there. Let's see how he does at heavyweight. Ruiz, because he had the win against Joshua. And these fighters who are up and coming that I mentioned. Do you feel, how much longer, first of all, do you want to stick around, champ? And how much more do you feel you have to prove so that eventually guys like me can accurately sort of assess you in heavyweight history and put you where I'm sure you feel you belong?
You know, I've as long in this game as I want to, because there's nothing out there that can touch me. We almost already seen the most dangerous heavyweight out there, Deontay Wilder, get taken to school once and then brutally knocked out in the second fight. I always said, if I can get past Deontay Wilder, then it'd be a long time before there's anybody else who can come close. Wilder's always been the most dangerous opponent in the division for me, other than Vladimir Klitschko himself. And the rest of those guys, I'm not too concerned about.
I didn't think, and I have to give Ryan Garcia a lot of credit and respect, and Eddie Reynoso and those guys, because I don't think Golden Boy really fancied that fight for Ryan Garcia. But Eddie Reynoso and Ryan Garcia do. And when that fight was ordered, I have to admit, I said to Luke Campbell, I don't believe they'll be taking this fight. And listen, they still have to step in the ring. And Luke said, well, I'm up for the fight, but, you know, I'm happy with whatever route we take. He wasn't calling out Ryan Garcia. And originally, we got the deal made, but the money that we were paying Ryan Garcia was based on bringing fans back to the arena in the UK. And when we sent the contracts to Golden Boy, they were concerned that that could take some time. So they wanted to start again on the negotiations. And just 5 minutes before the purse bid yesterday, we agreed to stage the fight in the US. And Golden Boy will stage that fight in the US. And I'm excited for it because I think it's such a fascinating fight. You know, Ryan Garcia is a huge star. Does he have 7 million Instagram followers? But the big debate is he an internet star or is he a pound for pound great fighter? If he's the real deal in the ring, that's a vicious combination, you know, and a combination to global success. I don't think he beats Luke Campbell. I think this is a terrible, terrible decision by them. But maybe it's a genius decision. We'll find out in November. It's a brilliant fight. And I'm excited for it because I really want Luke to win that fight. You know, he's probably the lightweight that's been thrown into the toughest challenges to try and win a world title. This one, of course, for the interim world title. But he had to go to Los Angeles and fight Jorge Linares. You know, I felt he could have nicked that fight even with a knockdown. His father passed away like 2 weeks before that fight. Then he boxed Vasily Lomachenko. And now he's fighting Ryan Garcia in LA. So you have to give Luke Campbell a huge amount of credit and respect. But I really believe that he's actually coming into his prime now. He's starting to believe in himself. Shane McGuigan's doing a great job. And I think this is a terrible time for Ryan Garcia. But listen, if he's as good as he looks, or as good as they say he might be, maybe he beats Luke Campbell. But I don't believe he does.
And I guess the main one was something I only found out about earlier today, which is the ongoing saga between Golden Boy Promotions and The Zone, with Canelo kind of the tug-of-war prize in the middle of that dispute. And from what I read, and I'm certainly not close to the situation, it seems that The Zone aren't entirely happy with the level of fights they've been getting from Canelo thus far for his guaranteed minimum stipend. Whereas Golden Boy believe they fulfilled everything they need to and want their minimum once again for next time Canelo fights.
You know, I think that when they made the deal with Canelo, they thought they were bargaining for Triple G, and they didn't cover themselves adequately contractually. And I think it's a thorn in their side to a huge extent that they haven't gotten that fight. And they bought some shitty Canelo fights, but then again, they also bought fights where they paid a fortune for the opponent. So was Rocky Fielding an inferior fight? 100%. That wasn't justified by $35 million for that. But it's hard to argue that Danny Jacobs and Kovalev weren't big fights when they paid double digits of millions and were involved in negotiating the fights themselves. So that surprised me a little bit by what I read this morning, because I know DAZN was very involved in those fights. That being said, are any of those fights really a major? Now, in the old days when Canelo was on pay-per-view, I still think that Kovalev would have been a pay-per-view, and I think Danny Jacobs would have been a pay-per-view. So it's hard for me to say those weren't meaningful fights, but they're not Triple G. And if the point here really is that I needed the locomotive of Triple G, I think maybe that's what's between the lines, that I never bargained for spending all this money and not getting the Triple G fight. I'm guessing that's my best guess, because I'm not in the middle of this and I really have no knowledge.